Hazmi and Mihdhar spent a few days in Bangkok and then headed for Los Angeles, where they would become the first 9/11 operatives to enter the United States on January 15th, 2000. I'd now like to turn to Dieter Snell, who, by the way, was one of the federal prosecutors who prosecuted Ramzi Youssef in the Southern District of New York. Dieter?
While the Hamburg operatives were just joining the 9/11 plot, Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar were already living in the United States, having arrived in Los Angeles on January 15, 2000. It has not been established where they stayed during the first 2 weeks after their arrival. They appear to have frequented the King Fahd Mosque in Culver City, possibly staying in an apartment nearby. Much remains unknown about their activities and associates while in Los Angeles, and our investigation of this period of the conspiracy is continuing.
And so from there, I'd like to actually add in some information that I'm learning from the Operation Encore files. And I want to share them with you because it might shed some light about who was actually assisting Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi while they were in Los Angeles. Now, you're going to see here, it's called Interaction with Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar. Now, the person talking with the FBI, his name is redacted, so we don't know who it is. So we're going to read, this is about 12 pages, but it'll give you some context as to what type of logistical and financial support Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi were getting while inside Los Angeles for those first 2 weeks. And also, this will actually, and this is actually coming from the Operation Encore files that I'm currently reading. So it says, blank recalls first meeting al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar as he, blank, was exiting the King Fahd Mosque after prayers. Blank, along with around 15 to 20 other individuals, were walking out when al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar came up to him, introduced themselves, and asked if the prayer was over. Blank replied that it was, but he would show al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar inside the King Fahd Mosque. Note, there is some contradiction in Blank's recollection of this first meeting. Now, whoever this person is, he was interviewed by the FBI twice to 2 or 3 times, and then he was meeting here again, and he kept changing his story from time to time. In the first interview of Blank by the FBI, Blank states that he met al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar at the King Fahd Mosque while entering to pray. In the next 2 interviews, Blank states that he meets al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar as he is exiting the King Fahd Mosque. Blank advised that he could tell al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar was Saudi by way of their accent. So Blank decided to introduce them to Fahad al-Thumairy, the imam of the King Fahd Mosque, as he was also Saudi. Now, like I said, in the previous other Encore videos I've done, there was a phone call that was made from Malaysia. We don't know who this person is, that was calling the King Fahd Mosque. Now, there was a confidential human source, a CHS, which reported to the FBI the nature of this phone call, in which the person told Fahad al-Thumairy that 2 brothers were coming inside the United States, and those 2 brothers were Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. So whoever this person is, he's actually introducing al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar to Fahad al-Thumairy, who's already known that al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar were to come to the King Fahd Mosque. So this is the initial meeting according to this person. Now, whether this person is actually involved with the setting up of al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar because he got some information that we don't know about, could be. But you'll notice that in this story that I'm reading to you, this person actually seems a bit deceptive about the nature of how much he's involved. Agents asked Blank, considering that the King Fahd Mosque is a Saudi mosque, if he was familiar with any other Saudis then in attendance, and if he personally knew them. Blank replied that there were other Saudis there with whom he was acquainted, but he did not know them well. Agents then asked Blank the demeanor of al-Thumairy, noting that Blank had described al-Thumairy in previous interviews as quiet and not very personable. Blank agreed that al-Thumairy was not really a friendly person, adding that he seemed arrogant. Continuing, agents then queried why Blank would introduce al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar to al-Thumairy, considering he knew other Saudis at the King Fahd Mosque, and al-Thumairy did not seem like the friendliest imam. That's a really good point, suggesting that al-Thumairy was actually very insular and not too friendly. Why would he introduce al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar to this man unless he was told to do so, so that al-Thumairy would know about the arrival of the two brothers? Note, during the first interview and this interview, the fourth one, this is the fourth interview, Blank states that he introduces al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar to al-Thumairy the first time he meets them. However, during the second and third interviews, Blank states that he introduces them during the second meeting. So you can see this guy changes the story from time to time. After introducing al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar to al-Thumairy, Blank walked to another part of the King Fahd Mosque and began his personal prayers. While Blank was praying, al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar spoke with al-Thumairy. Blank estimated that they talked for about 10 minutes. After finishing his prayers, Blank walked over to where al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar were talking with al-Thumairy. Then Blank walked out of the mosque with al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar. Blank emphatically stated that he did not hear any of the conversation, and at no time did he exchange any words with al-Thumairy other than to introduce al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar. Agents queried Blank as to how he could so precisely time his movements as to not hear any portion of the conversation among al-Hazmi, al-Mihdhar, and al-Thumairy, to which Blank shrugged. That's pretty strange, considering that this guy is pretty well detailed in the story and that he knew where he was standing, which he then claims that, oh, I couldn't hear any of the conversation. So they pressed him on it. As the three left the King Fahd Mosque together, al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar told Blank that they were staying at a hotel downtown, but would like to move closer to the community. Al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar stated they planned on studying English in the United States and wanted to live close to the local Muslim community. Blank then offered to show al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar a few motels located on Sepulveda Boulevard, which were close to the mosque. Agents queried Blank why he would show them motels rather than apartments near the mosque. Blank stated that they wanted to stay in a motel. Agents followed up by asking why al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar would choose to live in a motel and not an apartment if their plan was to study English and integrate into the community was more long-term. Blank, again, could not offer an explanation as to their behavior, adding that he didn't question their actions. Now, what we do know up to this point through the declassification of Operation Encore, as well as the FBI investigation, the previous investigation, Pent Bomb, that Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi landed inside the United States allegedly on January 15th of 2000. That a Tunisian cab driver by the name of Khalid Ben-Marine, under orders from Fahad al-Thumairy, told him to go pick up two men coming from Saudi Arabia and bring them to the King Fahd Mosque in Culver City, Los Angeles. Before that, like I said, Fahad al-Thumairy got a phone call from Malaysia in December of '99. This person told him that the arrival of two brothers were imminent and that they were coming inside the country and for you to assist them. All of this is now public, and the pieces are starting to fit. And now we're getting certain names to go along with certain people regarding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi that we didn't know before. So now we're up to this point where Dieter Snell, a senior staff member of the 9/11 Commission, which you just heard, saying that we don't know what they were doing in the 2 weeks prior. Well, here it is. After pointing out a few of the motels, Blank, al-Hazmi, and al-Mihdhar walked north of Sepulveda Boulevard and then headed east on Venice Boulevard toward Midvale Avenue. Blank showed al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar a few local Mediterranean restaurants and grocery stores. Blank stated that the Mediterranean restaurants he showed al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar were immediately east of Midvale Avenue on Venice Boulevard. That sounds familiar? No, this location is the exact place where both the Mediterranean Deli and Mediterranean Restaurant were located. Well, what happened here? In January of 2001, according to Omar al-Bayoumi and his associate Kaysan Bindan, and to confidential human source in the previous video, members of the mosque told Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi about the Mediterranean restaurant, even though members of this mosque wouldn't go there because they found it beneath them, that they would go to a better restaurant. According to Kaysan Bindan, when he and Omar al-Bayoumi first met al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar, it was in the Mediterranean restaurant after first quickly stopping in the deli on Venice Boulevard, immediately east of Midvale Avenue. Now, when that phone call came from Malaysia, Fahad al-Thumairy, Omar al-Bayoumi, and the U.S. Saudi Minister of Affairs located in Washington, D.C., Muhammad al-Jarrah, who hired Fahad al-Thumairy to be the imam at the King Fahd Mosque, they were all told, Muhammad al-Jarrah told Fahad al-Thumairy and Omar al-Bayoumi to take care of Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Two associates of Muhammad al-Jarrah, and I think one of the name was al-Mutawib, and the other one was, I forgot the other guy's name. But these two guys knew al-Thumairy and al-Bayoumi, and they acted as intermediaries about information regarding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi getting the help that they need while in Los Angeles. If you haven't seen the previous Operation Encore videos, go watch them. And you'll see a chronological order of Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi happening. Agents queried Blank why he was showing al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar Mediterranean restaurants. They're not Mediterranean, they're Saudis, right? Blank looked to his attorney, who replied that Blank meant Middle Eastern restaurants. Right, sure. Agents followed up by asking Blank if he was familiar with and used the terms Arabic or Middle Eastern. Blank replied that he was familiar, to which agents then asked why Blank had used the word Mediterranean to describe the restaurants he showed al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar instead of Arabic or Middle Eastern. Blank replied that he had meant Middle Eastern. No, he didn't. He really meant Mediterranean because that was the name of the damn restaurant. So that when this guy brought them to the restaurant, they would know where to go to meet who? Omar al-Bayoumi, who gave them lodging, who got them their driver's license, helped them get their driver's licenses and get an apartment under his name in which he would pay the rent for them, showing a wider network of Saudi help. No, in the first two interviews of Blank, he refers to the restaurant as an Arabic restaurant, not a Mediterranean restaurant. In this interview, he fucked up. In the third interview, Blank does not specify the type of restaurant he shows al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar. So you can see he gave three different stories. The first two, he said Arabic restaurant. The third interview, he did not specify. In this interview, it was Mediterranean restaurant. So why is he basically changing his story? I'll continue. Agents asked Blank whether they then ate at any of the restaurants he showed al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar. Blank replied that he did not eat with al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar. However, Blank then immediately added that al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar may have ordered food, but that he didn't order anything. Blank advised that they may have ordered food to go, or they may have quickly eaten the food. Agent then asked again if Blank ate with al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar at the restaurant, to which Blank replied that al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar probably got something to eat and they probably ate it at the restaurant, but that blank did not order anything. After visiting the restaurant, blank pointed out a nearby grocery store on the same block to al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar. Now, in the story about al-Bayoumi meeting al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar at the Mediterranean restaurant, after the meeting was over, al-Bayoumi went to the grocery store and walked around for an hour and didn't buy anything. Agents queried blank as to whether they exchanged phone numbers or agreed to meet again. Blank advised that he provided his home phone to al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar and told them he would see them in the mosque. Blank does not recall exactly how they parted, but he walked home from the restaurant. Agents asked Blank what he knew about al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar after the first meeting. Blank replied that he knew they were from Saudi Arabia and that they had come to the United States to study English. How did he know that? Unless al-Thumairy told him. Blank advised that when they first met, al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar told him they had only been in the United States a couple of days. And that was when they stood at the apartment complex of Fahad al-Thumairy. Remember, Khalid al-Mihdhar drives them to the King Fahd Mosque to meet Fahad al-Thumairy. Thumairy gave them lodging for the first couple of days. Agents then queried as to why he was providing assistance to al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar, to which Blank replied that it was common among Muslims to assist others in the community, especially travelers. Well, guess who used that excuse? Omar al-Bayoumi, when he told that to the FBI and the 9/11 Commission. Everyone's so friendly all of a sudden. And then the agents asked a really important question. Agents queried Blank, how many other times prior to meeting in al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar did Blank assist other Muslims from the mosque? Blank replied, this was the first time. I guess the first time for everything. Agents queried Blank, how many times since meeting al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar did he Blank assist Muslims for the mosque? Blank replied, never. So you're telling me that this guy doesn't know more than what he's alluding to the FBI? That out of nowhere, out of the generosity of this guy's heart and mind, that he started to open up to just these two guys and never again or never before? It's bullshit. Blank stated that the next time he saw al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar was a couple of days later at the mosque. Blank was walking into the King Fahd Mosque when he ran into al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar, who were also coming in to pray. After praying, the three exited the mosque together. Blank then accompanied al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar to their motel located on Sepulveda Boulevard, between Washington Boulevard and Venice Boulevard in Culver City. And, we didn't know that before. Remember what Dieter Snell said? We don't know where they were. Well, here we are. Blank estimated that it was 5 to 10 minute walk from the mosque. It wasn't very far. Blank went into their room for a short while, then returned home. After a couple of days, by the way, this hotel place was paid for by Fahad al-Thumairy. And that is in during the Pemberton report, as well as the interview with Khalid al-Mihdhar. After another couple of days, Blank met with al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar again. Blank could not recall if al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar had called him at home or if they had all met at the mosque again. How do you not know that? I mean, that's a distinct difference between meeting them at the mosque or having them call you. In either case, Blank drove al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar to a local grocery store, probably only a couple of blocks from the mosque, in Blank's car. Blank advised that al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar brought some groceries, and then they all returned to their motel room. Agents queried, why would he drive them to a grocery store that seemed to be within walking distance of al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar's motel room? Right. Remember, he said that before. The grocery store was nearby the motel room. Blank replied that he had his car with him at the mosque, so he decided to drive them. When agents reminded Blank that he had just stated al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar may have called him at home to pick them up, Blank replied that he couldn't remember. Agents then queried blank whether he drove al-Hazmi because they were planning on buying a lot of groceries, to which blank replied that they didn't buy very much at the grocery store. So why did he drive them there? What did they talk about in the car that they couldn't talk about on the phone? The next time that blank recalls being with al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar is when they asked if blank would drive them to the downtown area of Los Angeles so al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar could take a bus to San Diego. Now, here's where it doesn't make sense. Al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar don't speak English. They've never been inside the United States before. Remember that, okay, as I'm reading more of the story. So al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar could take a bus to San Diego. Al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar told blank that they wanted to visit San Diego to see if they would prefer to live there. Blank advised al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar that he would not be able to take them all the way downtown because of blank's work. Blank offered to instead call and find out if there was a bus terminal closer to Culver City. Blank placed a call to the payphone in front of al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar's motel to the bus company. Blank could not recall the name of the company, but thought that it could have been the Greyhound Bus Company. According to blank, the bus company told him that there was another terminal in Santa Monica that would have buses going to San Diego. Blank asked about the schedule for the following day and provided the information to al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar. Now remember, they don't speak English. They know anything about where they're going, how to get there, how to get to San Diego, how to get there from Santa Monica. Agents queried blank as to why he would use a payphone and not his own phone or al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar's motel phone. Right. Blank could provide no explanation except to say that they must have needed to use the phone book. How does that make sense? Agents queried blank if he had a phone book at home or if there was a phone book in al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar's motel room, to which blank replied yes to both. Agents then followed up by asking if it was blank's normal practice to use payphones, to which blank replied no, of course not. Agents then asked why blank had used the payphone, to which blank stated that they must have been in front of the payphone, so it was easier to use the payphone. Just use the motel room phone. Agents then asked if blank had ever called flight schools for al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar from that payphone or any payphone, to which blank replied he had not. The next day, blank picked al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar up at the motel and dropped them off at the bus terminal in Santa Monica. Blank could not recall how they checked out of the motel. Blank stated that al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar left a suitcase with them, stating that they would pick it up at a later date. After dropping al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar at the bus terminal, blank did not hear anything from them for a week or so, and then received a call from al-Hazmi. Now, he just dropped them off at the Santa Monica Greyhound bus station. Now remember, al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar don't speak English. They don't know how to get to San Diego. So who told them about certain directions? Did they really take a bus? Or did this person drive them to meet Anwar al-Awlaki, who is an imam at a mosque in San Diego, the Al-Ribiyat? Because what we know from FBI numerous interviews of Anwar al-Awlaki is that, yes, he had met Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, but he did not really know them. Well, he lied about that much because Anwar al-Awlaki was informed by Omar al-Bayoumi that they were coming to San Diego. So everyone's lying here. We're not telling the whole truth. No, during the interview, blank presented his interaction with al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar during this time they lived in Los Angeles as discreet and limited. But that's not the case, because it seems this guy's been around them for every single day, acting as a liaison, telling them where to go, who to meet. However, considering the amount of time al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar first spent in Los Angeles, between 10 to 20 days, blank actually appears to have seen him quite frequently. and for relatively long periods of time on each occasion. During the interview, blank was able to recall at least 5 specific occasions when he was with al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar. Yet, as blank himself admits, although he cannot recall exactly, he likely saw them a couple of additional times at the mosque. This would mean that blank saw them almost every other day during their time in Los Angeles. Blank's contact with al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar at this level of frequency appears to contradict his characterization of their interaction. That's right, because he changes the story every time, whoever this person is. So why isn't he telling the truth? Agents asked blank how he felt when al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar left Los Angeles. Blank appeared befuddled by this type of question, as he began to stammer and look repeatedly to his attorneys for guidance. When agents asked blank if he was happy or relieved, blank immediately stated that he was relieved. Why was he relieved? Was he being pressured by Fahad al-Thumairy? Was he being pressured by Omar al-Bayoumi to assist these two men at all costs? Blank appeared to relax considerably at that moment, slouching more into his chair and leaning back from the table. During much of the earlier questioning, Blank's lower jaw quivered, his hand shook, and he played with the bottle top of his water bottle. That means he was nervous about some of the questions the FBI was asking him regarding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Or maybe it's because he provided much more support than he was allowed to talk with the FBI. Was he under threat by al-Thumairy and al-Bayoumi? Blank does not recall hearing anything from al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar for a couple of months or so, and then received a call from al-Hazmi stating that both he and al-Mihdhar were coming up to Los Angeles. Blank believed that this was probably around the summer of 2000. Blank stated that he invited his friend, Blank, to come to dinner that night and meet everyone at Blank's apartment. Blank could not explain why he asked Blank to come along with them, merely stating that Blank was his friend, so he asked him. Blank advised that he and Blank met al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar and another individual named Modar Abdullah. Modar Abdullah actually lived in San Diego, was known to Anwar al-Awlaki, and was also interviewed by the FBI regarding his interaction with both Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Now, I might read some of those in another video because he's actually prominently displayed in the FBI Pent Bomb report as well as the FBI Operation Encore reports. Agents queried Blank how al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar knew where Blank lived, to which Blank replied that he had shown them before. Agent then asked when Blank had shown them, as he had earlier stated that he merely pointed in the direction of his home in previous reports and interviews. So again, he changes the story. Up Blank. At this point, Blank's attorney interjected that Blank must have told them on the phone. Right. Blank could not recall what kind of car the three had driven from San Diego, but stated that he believed Modar was driving because he always drove. That night, Modar, al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar stayed at the home of Blank's sister. So this guy, who barely knew al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi, let these two strange Saudi men stay at the home of his sister overnight, which was located in the same apartment complex as Blank's. Blank could not recall the subject of conversation that night, except to state that al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar had asked Blank about going to school and getting married in the U.S. Blank does not recall interacting with Modar, al-Hazmi, or Mihdhar the next morning. Blank advised that at some point during their stay, al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar picked up the bag they had left and took it with them. Note, Blank's recollection of how he met al-Hazmi al-Mihdhar again in Los Angeles after they moved to San Diego is noteworthy. In Blank's first interview, he states that they simply all met at the King Fahd Mosque. In the second interview, Blank adds a phone call from al-Hazmi prior to the meeting at the King Fahd Mosque. By the third interview, blank has dropped the meeting at the King Fahd Mosque and states that they merely called him and then met at blank's apartment. Three totally different stories about how they initially met. Why is this guy lying? A couple of months after this meeting, blank recalled receiving a phone call from al-Hazmi stating that he was coming up to Los Angeles to look into going to school there. Blank stated that al-Hazmi met blank at blank's home and stayed there all night that night. The next morning, blank came over and went with al-Hazmi to a nearby community college to make inquiries about studying, even though al-Hazmi doesn't speak English. Blank explained that blank with al-Hazmi instead of blank because blank was going to that school and had the time to go with al-Hazmi. Agents queried blank if this was why blank was invited to meet al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar for dinner, to which blank said that it might have been, but he couldn't recall. I wonder why. And this is regarding another person, and that's basically it. So now we know for the first 2 weeks where al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar were staying. First, they were staying at a motel room that was provided to by Fahad al-Thumairy. And secondly, they were staying at the apartment and at the sister's apartment of this person whose name is redacted. This person also provided logistical support to both al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar, driving them around, showing them certain places, such as the Mediterranean restaurant to which they met Elmar al-Bayoumi. This guy changed his story a number of times. The question is, why did he change his story 4 different times? I don't know. But I just want to inform you about the latest updates that we keep getting from the latest 5,200 declassification Operation Encore report. And the more I read and the more I learn, if there's any more important information regarding the 9/11 hijackers, I certainly am going to be informing you, the public, when I first hear about it. So stay tuned. And now we know where al-Hazmi and al-Mihdhar were staying in the first 2 weeks in Los Angeles. We're starting to put the puzzle pieces slowly together. And hopefully we can get a more clearer picture of what was going on before 9/11.